Hello, hello, Moshi Moshi. Today I'm drawing this thing, which is Whisper the Wolf from the IDW comics of Sonic the Hedgehog, the recent re-release. There's a bunch of business-related mumbo-jumbo in regards to what that entails, why they're relaunching the series, and so forth and so on, but it's not really pertinent. The important thing is that Whisper the Wolf is a cute design, and it's probably a good girl in need of head pats. That's probably what's more important. I don't know anything about this character. The only thing that I really know is that she was introduced in the 8th issue of the new run, and she she has eyes, but they are closed. And she's a sniper, and she is overtly a reference to Metal Gear, which should, be kind of obvious, and that I'm going to draw her. Those are the important things that you need to be aware of. Now, I'm trying to make this primary as fast as possible because I kind of want to listen to music right now. So to that end, I'm going to try to just lay something out as quickly as I possibly can. And I only wanted to do a little primary sort of live commentary right here, just to mention one or two things in regards to the primary itself. One is that I wanted to make sure that I made it obvious what her job is, and her job is apparently to kill people. So good for her. What a good girl. Still a good girl. She is a sniper, so I wanted to make sure that she had a sniper pose. But whenever I think of sniper poses, I tend to think of one thing, and that is lying prone on the ground. Sniping. But the problem with that is that it doesn't really show off much of her design. In fact, it congests most of her design and ensures that it is basically impossible to see anything that's going on with it. So to that end, I am going to focus on trying to utilize some other standardized sniping positions that don't fall within that realm of ridiculousness. And speaking of ridiculousness, her weapon is... it doesn't even really look like a weapon. It's a very Sonic weapon. Like, I think it's really stupid looking, but it's supposed to be because it's a Sonic Universe thing, so... it looks exactly the way that it should look. She's a well-designed character. And I think that I've mentioned this in the past. Can't remember exactly. But I've said that I think that the least effective designs in all of Sonicdom have been the ones that were the most original, like the closest to the inception of this series. So like Sonic himself, horrible design to try to replicate. The original design, as far as him being a little ball that rolls up and rolls around at the speed of sound, that sort of thing, actually works just fine. It's just that over time his design has moved from being like a little ball with a head to being more elongated and more heroic looking, and that has not translated very well. It's been definitely working against them in that regard. So it kind of looks ridiculous these days, and especially with the mono eye thing. I absolutely detest the mono eye. I think most humans that are alive today that can draw at all also detest the mono eye. The only people that I could really think of that would defend it would just be really die-hard fans that would say something like, oh, it's iconic, or, other bullshitisms that fans love to rehash whenever there's not actually an argument for something, other than they just got used to it. Sort of like the blue arms thing. Well, Sonic should have his weird-ass tan arms that make no sense. Why? Well, it's always been that way. He looks weird to my eyes because I've always seen him that way. Therefore, it should always remain the same. Been playing, speaking of which, I've been playing Monster Hunter World for PC lately, and Monster Hunter has a lot of that going on. It has a lot of, it's always been this way, so it's gotta be this way. That's very dangerous in regards to designing anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a movie. It doesn't matter. People can get used to things very quickly. And if you do not if you do not ensure that your product is changing and has enough iterations, look at Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles is a great example of this, where there's a lot going on. Actually, I think I'll reverse this. There's a lot going on as far as like redesigns go in that franchise. So if you were to come up with a completely new design, people might say, well, I don't prefer this one or anything like that. But they would still openly accept the idea of a completely redesigned character. Whereas something with, like Sonic, he's changed so little, other than just proportional things, like very minor iterations, so that whenever you actually do something like change the color of his arms, which they should, he looks ridiculous. I mean, does he have sleeves? It's stupid looking. But if you do that, people will just get up in arms about it, because it's just never changed before. So as a result, you're working against the grain for really no good reason. Alright. So focus a little bit. She kind of has like a little owl look about her as a result of the way that she's colored. I really like her design, but I mentioned that primarily because I think that the modern designs... I'm probably not even going to use this primary, I just wanted to demonstrate what I was doing. I think the modern designs have gotten a lot better in regards to being more approachable as far as being able to actually use them and being able to actually draw them. The older designs are not friendly at all. The closer that you get to modern day, the more, I guess, reasonable all the designs become. Like, the originals, not that great. Sonic especially, terrible. Just absolutely terrible for that reason. Something like Rouge, I was having to work with Rouge, and I've been over that before, about how she would look much better if she were just one solid color. Which is, you notice, that's what Whisper looks like here. She's one solid color for the most part. She does have sort of these intermediate things going on, especially in regards to her little muzzle thing here. So she does follow the same design traits as the other Sonic characters have. But at the same time... yeah, it's got to be the forward one, I guess. I actually probably should switch this over. But it matches her color palette a lot better than it does the older characters. Like, Sonic has this weird Caucasian flesh tone in the same way that Rouge does, so... it does not look particularly good. It's kind of unusual. It's uncanny valley a little bit. But with these more modern characters, the decisions that are being made in regards to the overall design are a little bit better. Alright, so I'm not going to make this live part too long. There's some other things I want to talk about, if I can even remember them. And by the way, she does have actual eyes. You can see them, and I think this is the original leak version. We can see she does have eyes. Has really pretty eyes, too. Very sinister-looking eyes. She's such a cutie pie. Dangerous, killer cutie pie. But you get the idea. This is probably not the primary that I'm actually going to use, but I wanted to show you what I was up to in regards to that. And some very basic introductory thoughts. I actually would like to do something a bit more dynamic than this. This is a bit too flat. So I'll probably end up you'll probably see me trying to do a bunch of different things in more dramatic poses, but the main thing is I'm going to try to get as much of her body into frame as I possibly can, and ensure that it's not something like, for example, if I were doing a standard sniping thing, I could do like her head up in the forefront like this, and her eye would be like right here, and she'd be looking down the scope or something. And this would be the general area of her hair. Here's her ears. And, but then you would run into the problem of, you just have like a little bit of her body back here and some legs. And then that would be it. So, you wouldn't really be seeing much of anything. Alright. So, if this is your first time joining one of my things, my primaries always look terrible. It will get better once you get to the time lapse. So, everyone enjoy that in the future. I will see you then. Wow, my primaries, they really do look like shit, don't they? Alright. The same drink I drink every time I do one of these. What is going on with my life? Alright. Draft complete. Draft not complete, because it's never really complete. I think I spend the most time on these drawings doing the drafts, which is a good thing. You should be doing that. But it doesn't reflect well if you're kind of just showing it off for the first time. Like, if someone's seeing me draw for the first time and they're looking at the drafts, they're probably thinking, man, this looks terrible. You know, is this really gonna be how it is? Is this how it do? No, that's not how it do at all. Because it ends up looking fine. It's just, for whatever reason, I'm just garbage at doing a very, very fast draft. It just does not turn out well. And I think the main reason for that is because I've learned over time that whenever you're doing a draft, unless it's something that you have done a lot, if it's something that you do all the time, then it's not going to matter too much. But especially for something like a Sonic character, because Sonic characters, especially for me, are very difficult to get just right. So as a result, I have to do a lot of drafts with them. Because I'll go into that later. Because it just takes quite a bit of time to be able to get them to where they need to look how they be. How it do. Right? Right. Sonic characters. A lot of problems with Sonic characters. I think I mentioned this in probably the Rouge video, probably. Surely I talked about this. But the main problem with Sonic characters is just their proportionality. Of course, I talked before about how the ones that they first designed, like Sonic and Tails and so on. I'm gonna, by the way, turn on my fan. You guys probably can't hear this, but if you suddenly hear a roar or anything like that, that's what it is. Because it's really hot in here. It is currently. I bought a temperature. This is how you know it's bad. I bought a temperature gauge just for this room because of all the equipment in here. It's actually only 78 in here right now, but I'm very hot-natured, cold-natured. I don't know which is which. Like far-sighted, nearsighted. I have no idea. But I get hot really easily. I despise the heat. And unfortunately, I live in an area in which it has been 90 degrees exactly or above for the past 2 months in a row. And it fucking sucks. Okay, anyway, sorry. Doing the primaries for these characters. You notice I've been trying lots of different things. Just trying to see what sticks. Sticks. I've been trying to see what sticks. Because especially, like, consider... Let's say that you're drawing this character. Even if you don't draw and you're just kind of hanging out, just like jerking it or whatever you're doing. You're kind of thinking to yourself, what do I want to show off? Like, consider that. Like, if you're drawing, you have to think about, what am I wanting to show off this character? Because you could do something where it's just their head, which I enjoy doing those, but there's only so many times you can see it without getting sick of it. You could do a pose in which she's lying down in the prone position, like I was talking about. Here I'm checking the proportional ratios of the on model. You could do that, but it doesn't show off much. You could do sort of the kneeling pose that I was going for earlier. You could do that, or you could do what I'm doing here, where she's kind of just reclining, sitting, that sort of thing. You could do a from the back shot where you're mainly seeing her like over the shoulder. You could do like an action shot where she's like jumping or rolling on the ground. Who knows? Like there's all sorts of things that you could do. It's a blank canvas. You can do anything. But what is it that you're trying to show off about the character? And in my case, I wanted to show off the full range of her front design. And because, I want to be sure that you can actually see her cutesy little kitsune face. And I wanted to make sure that it was clear that she was a sniper. The problem with actually doing a sniper pose is that it was congesting the image too much. I kind of decided on that. Because if she's in a prone position, obviously you can't see anything. Because it's her back that's exposed to the ground. And if she's lying prone and you still want to see her face, there's basically only one angle that you can draw at. And there you would really only be seeing her head and like a little bit of her legs. That's pretty much it. Or you would have to draw her from the side. And drawing something just from the side, a profile shot, is pretty boring. So whenever you're doing your composition, those are the things you kind of have to worry about. So in my case, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to have her stop aiming with the damn thing. Because even whenever she was in a crouched position, she was still getting a lot of congestion. And I really wanted to draw her with one eye open. Because my original idea was she'd be lying down, like halfway looking through a scope or something, which her gun doesn't have a scope, so I had to drop that idea. And she would be like looking out of one eye towards you. The viewer, the camera. Didn't work out. Did not work out. Plans change, especially in the course of a single drawing. Drawing, it's same within anything, drawing or writing, whatever. You can start with one thing and you'll end up with something completely different. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. It's just your ability to be able to deal with it. To be able to accept that that's what's going to happen. Because if you start drawing and you end up with something that's completely different from what you started at, some people would get really upset. You know, they'll want to throw away the drawing even if the new drawing looks fine. Because they think, well, I started out with a plan, I didn't realize my plan. And that's fine. It's understandable, but life isn't like that. You're not always going to get what you want. You need to be able to compensate. You need to be able to adapt. But on the other hand, if you're drawing something and you find you end up drawing the same thing every time, like, I can be bad about this. Sometimes I'll try to do a very aggressive perspective shot. Like, I want to show action, or I want to do, like, lensing. You know, a fisheye lens? Sometimes I want there to be a lens that shows, like, the character's, like, head exaggerated, and then their feet reaching the ground in the same perspective shot, with their legs almost going down to a single point, like a dagger almost, because the lensing on the shot is so aggressive. And you can do that, but whenever I try, I tend to end up with something that looks so incredibly exaggerated and ridiculous looking. This is my final primary, by the way, that I end up completely abandoning it and just kind of just doing what I always do. So if you're trying something new and you find you keep going back to what's comfortable, that can be something that you can self-criticize over. Although sometimes, like in doing something like that, like trying to do that aggressive perspective shots, those are not only difficult, but sometimes they're not really fitting for the character, and they're not really fitting for the mood, and they can over-exaggerate to the point where it's just ugly looking. Now, there's all sorts of reasons why you wouldn't do it, so it's not always the best thing to do. It's just one of those... It's sort of an artist fetish sort of thing. Of, ooh, perspective shot. Oh, yeah, jerking off hand motion. But it's not always the best thing to do, so... something I did want to mention in the course of doing this... because... I was complaining earlier about the nature of how Sonic designs are really difficult for this reason. Like, there are very, very specific proportions on a Sonic character to get them right. Most of the time, and I did it with this one, again, I didn't do it as bad as I used to. But Sonic characters tend to have gigantic heads. Like, massive heads. Like, even if you remove, like, hair, ears, whatever extraneous things they have, then the orb that is their skull, and most older characters especially are just orbs. The more recent ones do not have that problem as much. But that orb is usually big enough that you could probably fit their entire torso inside of it. Good way of thinking of it, I guess. Like if they like crouched over and bent, like you bent forward, and you just took their torso as a shape and put it inside their skull, it would fit just fine. That's how big their heads are. And with this one, that's almost the case. It's a very specific sort of proportion. Their limbs have a similar issue. Like, whenever you're drawing a character, their hand needs to be about as big as their face is. But that's for humans. Like, just ordinary people. Like, if you put your hand up to your face, ha! I tricked you. I slapped you in the face. Sorry. But if you put your hand up to your face, it should be about the same size as your general expression. Like, it's not going to envelop your entire skull, obviously, but your hand generally is about that size. So if you look at Sonic characters, they had this giant head, but they also have these thin, noodly arms, but they still have giant hands. And one of the reasons why all the characters always wear gloves, almost always, I'm trying to think of some that don't. Styx is an example, I know that. But there's some that are like that. But most of them have gloves for various reasons. One of them is so that their giant, grotesque monster hands don't look as horrifying as they would have, because you're thinking, well, it's just a glove. You know, they're going to be big or whatever. So you don't have to think about it too much. Also, it's there to, like, break up the color. A lot of the characters have white gloves, because otherwise they would have this one general tone to their body, and it's kind of off-putting, I guess. So you kind of have to watch that. That's a good way of breaking up the design, is just have gloves. I think even if you got rid of the gloves on some of these characters, they would probably end up with, like, white hands anyways, like their fur, because it just looks better, that sort of thing. By the way, you notice whenever I'm doing this primary right here, I'm not following the original. Like, down to the letter, I'm not doing that. Because the first one was not perfect, the second one was not perfect, the third one even is not perfect. And whenever I start doing the line work, it's, again, still not perfect, and I have to do minor adjustments with the final line work as I'm drawing it. This is the reason why it's important to just do a bunch of primaries, especially if it's with a character that you're not used to, or a kind of character that you're not used to, kind of design you're not used to drawing. You really need to do a lot of sketch work, or else it is not going to work out. Even between doing the original live and doing the post commentary that I'm doing now, or not post commentary, the drawing that I'm doing right now for post. I actually went in and sketched her a few times, just as separate drawings, to try to make her look a little bit better and try to kind of comprehend the model a little bit better, and it did help. Like, just practicing a little bit helps a lot. You're not going to get it right the first time. But back to the horrifying characters. Even their legs, like the Sonic character's legs, also, like, they're often really noodly. There's, like, even like Rouge. Like, Rouge is like this very, like, voluptuous sort of character design, but her legs are still, for the most part, just sticks, which looks really strange on her. Like, she has this giant bust and giant ass, because ha ha ha, wankery, but her legs are still fucked up. So trying to make sure that you get her just right is really difficult, but still on model. Because it's, like I said before, it's really easy to do a Sonic character off model and have it look kind of just more or less okay. And right here, I get tired. It was like, I'm not drawing all these extremely straight branches. I'm going to make these things wobbly and shitty looking, because that's more interesting. So that's what I did there. But trying to get them on model is very difficult for that reason. Their legs are very long. Like in the case of Rouge, actually, it seems like her... Let me look at an image real fast. Yeah. Even her legs are not purely just sticks. They're still kind of thick for a Sonic character. Especially, it depends on the game that you're looking at as well. But her legs go all the way up, don't they? But the legs on her are longer than her entire torso, certainly. And they might even be longer than the combination of her torso and her head. Like, the proportions on Sonic characters are very, very strange. They're very exact, and if you don't get them just so, then it completely fucks up the character. So it's easy to draw them off model if you're doing fan work. If you're doing something official, and this is why I was trying to bring this up, if you're doing something official, it's a lot more of a pain in the ass. There was one night on Discord where Adam Bryce Thomas, he's one of the illustrators that works on the Sonic IDW series that's running right now. I'm not sure if he's still working on it or not. And but he stopped by and we had a little bit of a minor session of just talking about it. Talking about the difficulties of working within the constraints of working on model. Because that's the first thing that I thought about. It's like, well, yeah, sure, drawing a Sonic character is fine if you're doing fan work. Because you don't have to abide by the weird proportional ratios that you have to worry about with on-model work. But I was talking to him, and as how do you deal with that? Because, if you get it even remotely wrong, then it completely fucks up everything. And, of course, his response was, oh yeah, that's very true. And not going to try to speak for him or anything. And certainly don't want to get him in trouble, that's for sure. But, needless to say, there are difficulties in regards to doing Sonic character designs, especially if you're trying to do it completely on model. It's one of those things, I almost wish I'd done this live, because I can't demonstrate it now, obviously. But whenever you are drawing one of these characters, even getting something like, I do this a lot, the ratio of their eyes in relation to the rest of their face. Like, Sonic characters had these giant eyes. One of the reasons why I didn't mind drawing Whisper here is because you don't have to worry about that necessarily. But they had these giant eyes, and I'm not really good drawing giant eyes. Like, I had this problem with Peach, drawing Princess Peach from Mario Brothers. She also has these, like, overly large, incredibly... Like, they're still sort of realistic, but they're just really overly large eyes, and I've always had trouble drawing those. Because whenever I do it, there's something about it that, to me, looks kind of fucked up. Like, there's something really unnatural looking about them to me. It's like I'm so detail-oriented that there's just so much space. Like, as far as the whites of their eyes, the distance between their features and everything like that, that to me, it looks really uncanny valley. And I can't tell if it's just me seeing it or if it's something that everyone can see. Like, there's things that people are good and bad at, and I'm really bad at drawing those sorts of eyes, those sorts of expressions. So whenever I'm doing a Sonic character, I tend to do one of two things. I tend to either draw their faces occupying their entire skull, because in my head, I'm like, well, that's how it is. That's what Sonic on model looks like. They have these giant expressions and faces, and these giant heads. But I usually go overboard. Because there's something about that in relation to the placement of their ears, usually, and the placement of their hair, if they have hair, that it never looks quite right. It's always off by just a little bit. Or the other thing I do is I make the expressions way too small. So they had these giant heads, and usually like a giant forehead or something, because the amount of space that their expression is occupying needs to be so incredibly specific, or it doesn't look like a Sonic character anymore. It just looks like a fan character. So someone like Adam, who actually has to do this for a living, whatever he's doing, my first thought about that was, oh, you poor man. Like, you actually have to do that. I mean, that must be absolutely miserable to have to try to get that right every single time. And again, not trying to put words in his mouth or getting him in trouble, but the general consensus was, yes, it is difficult. It is difficult to stay on model with Sonic characters. It is very difficult. But that night, I think what spurred it on was to talk about Rouge's the alternate design I was playing with. The one where Rouge doesn't have the weird white person skin tone. where she's completely white. Still really like that design. But we were talking about that and how, especially the older characters are more focused on that, having the Sonic mask around the mouth that pushes up the eyes. And even that mask, that little mask area, completely fucks up the way that the face has to be drawn. Because there's certain expressions and certain ways that you lay out the eyes. This probably doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense if you start drawing it. There's certain ways that you can do that you just can't do because there's that bottom line that you have to worry about. There's that bottom eyelid area that has to intersect with that little mask area. Whereas if they didn't have it, then you would never have to worry about it. And especially if they're doing an expression like if they're incredulous or something, where if you're looking at something with suspect eyes, and you can try it yourself, then you sort of squint a little bit, and you can feel the bottoms of your eyelids, like your bottom eyelids, they kind of go up. So try to apply that to a Sonic character like Sonic. Because what's down there? Nothing's down there. It's just that mask, right? So, if you need to draw an expression like that, what do? You obviously have to draw something going up. It can't be the mask area, because that mask is like a physical object on their head. You can't do anything with it. So the solution is that you have to have a bottom eyelid that you've never seen before come up from behind the mask, like it's another object that has been masked by the mask. And even once you draw that, whenever you start coloring it, what color is it? Is it the color of the mask area, like Sonic's face, like his mouth area? Or is it the color of the surrounding area, like his upper eyelid? Because his upper eyelid is blue. But if you were to draw that bottom eyelid, would it also be blue? Because it's right next to that mask area. So if you extend it up from that area, it looks really unnatural. It's one of the things, the design is so fucked up and it causes so many problems for no reason. So the actual solution is you have to have the top eyelid be blue and the bottom one be tan. Or else it doesn't look right. It's that weird sort of problem-solving thing that if you've never drawn a Sonic character before, you don't really think about it until you actually start doing it. And the model is absolutely covered in little things like that. The older ones especially. Like I said, the modern ones are much, much better about it because the people that are responsible for drawing them are the ones actually designing them. Thank God for that. So that night, I think we sat around and just started screwing around just drawing characters. Like I was trying to sketch what would Amy look like if she was designed the same way that Rouge's design was. Like if she didn't have her mask either. And I said I didn't like Amy because, well, I mean, she's like an awful person, of course. Also, she's like 6 years old or something, and she got aged up so that she could fuck Sonic, and then he was just okay with it. Yeah, her lore is probably best forgotten, isn't it? That's concerning. But anyways, the other thing I don't really like about her is that her hair, like she has these bangs, right? Like if you look up a picture of Amy Rose, why is she called Amy Rose? Like I actually knew a girl in real life named Amy Rose. It's like a common name. Why would they choose such a human-sounding, ordinary-ass name? Like Sonic is Sonic because he's fast. Tails is Tails because he has tails. Knuckles is Knuckles because he has knuckles. And then there's Amy. What the fuck is an Amy? What is that? Why is she named Amy? And I guess she's named Rose because that's like her color. Like they can't name her Amy Pink. So like, oh, well, it's another pink color. It sounds like a girl. I don't know, fucking Rose. I don't know, fucking like labia or something. Nah, let's go with Rose. That's probably right. So that's how we got the name Amy Rose. I don't know. I don't fucking know. But a lot of things not to like about Amy. Personality, weird backstory, design, everything. So the thing I didn't really care too much about Amy is that her she sort of exemplifies everything that I don't like about the sort of proportionality weird ratios that you have to worry about with Sonic characters. Because she has all the things that are just really problematic about overall design in this series. She has the mouth mask. She has mono eye, gigantic mono eye. She has incredibly stiff hair. This is the thing I despise the most about her. Her hair is so stiff, which I guess is supposed to look like quills on a hedgehog. I don't know. I don't know. So her hair is really rigid, so it can't really move. It doesn't flow in the wind unless you're a fan artist and you're just drawing it that way. And it also forms this sort of helmet around her head that also encloses her eyes. So her hair, in addition to being hair, is also part of her face. So it extends beyond the scope of where her eyes are. So you have to, like, wrap her mono eye around the curvature of where her skull would be, and then worry about placing her stiff hair on the sides of it. It looks awful! It's terrible! She's one of the easiest characters to fuck up. And top all that off with, she does have hair on the top of her head, but it's this single row of 3 little spikes on her forehead, and there's nothing on top. So in addition to all these other problems, you still have to draw her head like a perfect sphere, nearly. And her concept art, they don't do that half the time. So you have a character that you have to worry about her head being perfectly, like, spherical, but at the same time you can't have it be too spherical. Because her skull is kind of more of an oval, especially since it's a mask resting on an area that itself is not perfectly spherical, because it's still like an animal muzzle. But it also has the framework of her hair. It's awful! Every element of her design is just the worst ever. It is the fucking worst. Plus, she has this horrifying dress. Her dress is abysmal. Like, they sort of fix it a little bit with the Sonic Boom thing, I guess. And if she's in 2D, like, if she's just pixels, where most of these problems come from in Sonic designs, is that they just used to be pixels and that's it, so it was fine. So having her have this giant, like, umbrella dress that furls out like it does, looks fine if she's a 2D character. But once you put it in 3D, oh my god! It is just the worst. Because she looks like a, I don't know, like a sucker or something. Like a suction cup. Like she's wearing a giant suction cup. She looks like she's wearing a nipple. Like a big nipple from a baby's milk bottle. Like she just slipped it on. It's just furling out. And it leaves nothing to the imagination. If she's in 3D, like in those older 3D games especially, there's her panties. Like, nothing sexual about it either. Because why would you? Why? Why? Like, they just give you a glimpse. Oh, here's something that looks like a giant-ass diaper. Because her torso still follows the rules of you need to fold up everything inside of the scope of her skull. Yet her legs are huge, like long. But she has these giant, immense boots. Like, her boots are so big you could fit her whole torso inside of it. Her design is awful. Awful design. Terrible. So the Adam or anyone else that actually has to draw her, or characters like her, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this. I'm so sorry that whatever Japanese man designed these creatures back in the 90s did not think ahead. I mean, how could they? Because, like, the original Sonic design is just a ball. Like, he's just a rolling ball. Because that's what he needed to be. So him being this little squat, like, if you've ever seen the Generations designs, and you see modern Sonic standing next to classic Sonic, as he's called, they look completely different. And the classic Sonic, the one that doesn't talk, which is even stranger, like, you can tell he's made so that he can fold up into a perfect little sphere. Because he's meant to roll. But this modern hero proportion Sonic with the weird, like, Slender Man body, in addition to his still, like, giant skull that has the really edgy... Like, it's all so wrong. It's just terrible. It is really bad. Anyways, one of the things that I tried to do was draw Amy if she was not that bad. Yeah, there she is. So, I tried to get rid of numerous things with her. I still kept the mask. Because the thing about her is that she has so little area. I guess I'll throw a picture up of her right here or somewhere in this video, if I can. But, oh, her bow also. Like her headband, she has this perfectly spherical head, but she also has a hairband. And it attaches to nothing! Like a hairband, like, goes near your ears, right? Like, there's a reason why that's there. But with her, it's just this thing that's just sitting back there, and it doesn't attach to anything, and it doesn't go behind her hair because her hair doesn't exist. And it's also on the very top of a perfectly spherical head, so it just looks like this line that's just resting on top of the rest of her design. Oh my god, she's awful. Anyways, I tried to make her hair, her quills, look more like just hair by furrowing it out a little bit. And, like, I didn't spend too much time on the drawing, so... Well, I drew it in literally, like, I think 3 or 4 minutes, so don't worry too much about it. But just the general idea was, how do you fix design so it's not so much of a pain in the ass to draw, so... My answer to that is, just make it so that there's more breadth and width to the design. And the features, like, get rid of that fucking Unai. I don't give a shit if you're a hardcore Sonic fan. No, it's gotta stay. It's always been... Fuck you. That shit looks terrible. Get rid of that first thing. ASAP. Sonic 2. I don't give a shit if he's... Oh, he looks weird now. He's got 2 eyes. Too bad. Get the fuck over it. I don't care if it's Uncanny Valley now. I don't care. Get that shit away from me. I don't play the game, so it doesn't affect me one way or the other, but I'll complain about it all the same. But this nonsense about the hedgehogs being the ones that look that way, get rid of it. But even her little like head bobby things, her 3 quills on top, like even fixing those was a bit of an undertaking. So my answer was sort of to follow a line on the top of her head, move it up a little bit so it curves up, so that whenever you're drawing it, it has somewhere to go. Like, this is the thing about designing characters that, if you're an artist, you don't really think about too much. You just know, well, this looks good. This looks bad. You know, that sort of thing. But whenever you're designing a character, it's important that one line stroke, if you're doing line work anyways, that one line stroke should be able to lead into the line stroke of another area. So with her, since she's just this, like, oval, like, she's just an oval with a mask resting in the middle of it, and these 3 spikes, uniform spikes, it's really difficult to get everything aligned correctly. And even more so if you're drawing her at angles that you're not used to drawing her at. Because she is obviously an old-school cartoon character that is still required to exist within a 3D space. So, whatever you actually have to do that, and you can't rely on... Like, a lot of drawing is just cheating. It's drawing things in a way that they would not be presented as being in real life, so you can make them more exaggerated, more exciting looking. That's one of the advantages of just drawing. So whenever you have a 3D model and you can't do anything to it... Like, they even have technology in the modern Sonic games, so that whenever you see characters talking at an angle, their mouth moves from the front where a mouth is, and it, like, starts resting on their cheek. Because that's how you draw them, right? It's really fucked up, because the design itself is so bad that you have to integrate the latest in technology, the latest in cheating technology, just to make it look somewhat adequate, so it doesn't look too fucking weird. I cannot speak, like, I must speak volumes on the nature of how bad Sonic designs are, because they are bad. They are not good. So whenever you're doing a redesign or something like that, it's important that the areas should be fun to draw on their own and lead into other areas, but not so much so that they absolutely must... Like, there's portions of Amy's design that are sort of okay. Like, the line of her upper, like, eyelashes do form, like, a circle that leads into where her hair should be. But that doesn't work if she has to do something like squint, or look angry, or, you know, or, like, heaven forbid, like, the characters that have uni-eye, the hedgehogs, what if they have to look to the side? Like, if you're, like, looking forward, and then you look at something out of the corner of your eye, right? You, like, your eye hits something. It hits your nose. Like, because there's an eye there. It's an eyeball. So it goes there, and then it stops. But on a mono-eye, there's nothing there. It's just one single masked, like, giant eyeball. So it just reaches, like, the edge of nothing, and then just sits there. It's so fucking weird. I guess you guys get the idea. Sonic characters are so... Like, I almost want to say, well, they're not badly designed, they're just, you know... But I'm sitting here thinking of, like, an excuse for that. I can't. They're just badly designed. They're shitty designs. The older ones, again, anyways. Like the one that I'm doing here... the one I'm doing here was designed by another one of the comic artists, Evan Stanley, I think. I think that's his name or her name. I don't know, but Evan Stanley, Whisper, and Whisper is an outstanding design. Like all the things that I was complaining about, like this sort of design solves all those problems. Because you notice, like, you don't have to worry about the head being a perfect sphere, no matter where you're drawing. Like, even with her concept art, like, I didn't draw her completely on model, but even with her concept art, like, her ears lead directly into her cheek. But there's still a break, like a break in the fur area, so that no matter what angle that you're drawing it at, even if your stroke is not the same as other people's stroke, then... you still have a lot of variance, a lot of wiggle room, so you don't have to worry about it too much. And it still looks like the character. And her little headbang thing, it's a simple shape, but it's still obviously hair that's hanging down. And there's a central line where it sort of moves up. But even something like the central line of where the hair is on the inside of the face, it's not a straight line. And it doesn't meet any other lines, other than just where the central point of the middle of the head is. So it's very easy to create a stroke for that area no matter what. Like, no matter what angle that you're working with. You don't have to worry too much about it. Whereas if it was something that led into something, like if it intersected with the mask and you had to follow the line of the mask, it would be a huge problem. You would have to worry about so many things. If you're like drawing her from a side angle, it's like, well... her little head thing is like this, so I'm going to have to put her at more of an extreme side profile, because if it gets too much on this side, then I'm going to have to try to create a line that intersects with her mask, even though it doesn't make any sense from this angle. Like, there's so many good decisions that were made in this design. Just based on how you're breaking apart everything. Like, even if all those conventional Sonic characteristics of, like, having the mask, the muzzle area, and even having the masking area. Like, this is how you have a mono eye without having one. Like, she just has an area around her face that, you know, as far as the design goes, it lets you know this is where the face is. This is where the eye occupies this area. This helps her be expressive. And not only, like, imagine if she were, like, angry or something. You can do that. Because you can bring down, like, her... They don't have eyebrows, necessarily. A lot of fan art draws them with eyebrows. They don't have them. But if you wanted to draw them with that expression, you can do that because her mask area creates the lines needed to be able to do that. The only thing that you really couldn't do probably that easily would be like if she were sad or worried or something like that. And even then, you could pull up a line around her eye, because you notice that her eyelashes, like her area around that, it also has a discolored area where it's sort of like makeup in a way, I guess. And you can use that to create that one way or the other. So it's not something you have to worry about too much. Like, it could be a more perfect design, I guess. There's like little bitty things, I suppose. But it's pretty fucking solid. Whereas compared to the older designs just... Ugh. I've already been over that. The only thing that I really thought about whenever I was doing this is there are conveniences in doing design like this that you don't really think about in most circumstances. There's one pretty good example with this design, and that's, you notice that she has her hair. She has a Callie Briggs situation going on. You know, Callie Briggs from SWAT Cats? She has her hair, then she has her skin tone, which I guess is supposed to be fur, whatever. But she has a tail. And her tail is the color of her skin tone. Which sort of makes sense if you think about it, but you're also thinking, well, that's her hair. Because you don't really see her skin tone as being fur, you see it as being skin. Because that's how you design characters like that. Because it's not too uncanny valley or anything. So with Whisper, she's sort of doing the same thing. In that she has hair. She has like her upper area, her ponytail is hair. She has bangs. Her ears have the same tone and, saturation values, everything. And then she has the mask. And then she has the muzzle. And the muzzle area is technically the color of the rest of her skin. Or her rest of her fur or whatever. So if she were to, say, be drawn in like shorts and like an A shirt or something like an A shirt and shorts. Good example. Or just completely nude, whatever. I don't care. It's, anything that exposes more of the rest of her down there. That sounded suspicious. If you were to do that, then the rest of that area would have to be the same color as her muzzle, which looks really, really strange. Especially whenever you consider that her tail is the color of her upper hair, but it's joining to an area that would be tan. So does she have like a yellow stripe that goes up her back? Which you can't see her back in this one, but it doesn't look like it does. But if that's the case, does it have just like this little triangle where it just meets and just stops? And that's what I'm saying is Sonic characters, or designs in general, have to be drawn with little conveniences like that sometimes. Because she's obviously drawn with the idea of, well, you never see that area, so you don't worry about it. And not only that, her gloves, like the area where her gloves extend up to, her like vest area and her pants and everything, those are just as much a part of her design as her physical body happens to be. So if you were to start taking those areas away, then you would run into a minor problem in regards to her color theory. Because her muzzle area and her upper, like, torso, her shoulders, mostly clavicle area, are dark because that dark area pulls you more into the center of all of the details of her body and directs you more towards her face. If it was a lighter color, then it would spread it out, and you wouldn't be able to see it as well. So if you were to take away her vest or change its color or something, and change the color of her gloves or remove her gloves, then that sort of occupying area would spread out so much that you would lose the thread of what her design is trying to do. As far as trying to pull all this information together into a central point. So if you were to ever change your design in any way, like give her additional colors and something, you would run into that problem. Nearly done with this, by the way. But overall, great design. I guess if you were to like draw her, like there's the swimsuit edition, and Whisper the Wolf is here, and she's in her two-piece or whatever you require. Or you're just drawing pornography, and you want to draw pornography, and you're like, Whisper the Wolf pornography. What should she look like under her design for my pornographies? And you're doing that or whatever it is. The only way I can really think of to break that up is if you gave her sort of like a color pattern, kind of on her body that sort of breaks up the color, so that it's more, I don't know, like, it doesn't make sense for a wolf to really have stripes. But if she did sort of, like, wolves do have sort of mottled coats, so it's not too out of the realm of possibility. But you also don't want your character to have a texture for a main design, right? Like, you can do that in Photoshop or something, but if you're doing it in line, or if you're doing it in grayscale, or just like purely line for that matter, then that element of the design just does not translate at all. So you can't really do that. So I guess it would have to be something where it's broken up in some way, which is one of the reasons why I usually like it whenever Sonic characters have their muzzle area be... You know how like cats sometimes will have a like white patch of fur that runs down their chest and across their stomach? Whatever that is. Like, I usually like it whenever these little animal characters have that, because not only does it solve that problem, but it also breaks up that area if it ever comes up. Because those two little central lines that go down their torso really help to break apart any concerns in that regard. So, you can't really do that with her since her upper area is already exposed like it is. So, it would take a lot of work to try to figure that out exactly. Alright, so, here we are. Whisper the Wolf completed. I really am an artist that everything kind of looks like shit until it doesn't. And in this case, everything really just... To me, especially, like, whenever I was doing the line work, I kept thinking, man, I do not know what I'm doing in regards to this line work. Because my modern sort of phase I'm going through right now is trying to do thick exterior lines to create sort of container effect on the characters. But I realized whenever I was doing the background, this doesn't really work. Because I can't do the same thing with the background. The background needs to have much thinner line work, or else this doesn't really work into it. But I'm also very detail-oriented, so I can't prevent myself from adding all these little detail lines. So I was having a hell of a time trying to work that out. And I still haven't worked it out. This is not a perfect image by any means. Certainly was trying to get through it as quickly as possible because I have so many other projects I'm working on right now. But in the end, it ended up looking more or less okay. And I think a lot of that is just because of those over sort of saturation layers that I added, the multiply layers, that sort of unify the general color of everything. Because the line work itself was not working out as far as trying to keep things from getting too congested. But anyways, alright, thanks go to Evan Stanley for their outstanding design. You can find them on DeviantArt, by the way. And, of course, to Adam Bryce Thomas for visiting that one day and having a little drawing jam session, as it were. Those are fun, by the way. If you ever like get together with other artists and just draw shit just for shits and giggles, it's a lot of fun. And that wasn't even like a session. We were just kind of just talking. You can find Adam Bryce Thomas, goes by ABT, I think, for the most part. You can find them on Tumblr, Adam Bryce Thomas Tumblr. So, hope you enjoyed the image. Hope you enjoyed your whisper pornographies. No, I wouldn't want you to do that. No one would ever do that. You can't find any of that online. Anyways, that's it for now. Goodbye.